So I'm officially starting the meeting at 7:02. And with that, just please stand. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tonight we have Steve Foster, Chris McClure, and our new celebrity, Lynn Savage. If anyone saw her photo today, it was good. Anyways, I like to put people on the spot and embarrass you. Yeah. To talk about in general about the facilities, about IT, and in general things about the budget overall. I think we're in pretty good shape relative to the budget, but there are things within facilities that seems to be, not so much today, Steve, and we'll get into it, but we're looking down the road and what your thoughts are. So yeah, your budget's here, but where do you see yourself 2, 3, 4 years from now? And Chris, I'm very concerned about security, especially all the news you hear about people being held, towns being held hostage and stuff like that. So I'd like to get your thoughts and making sure we have enough funds to protect us from that kind of thing. With that, do you mind if I bring Steve up first? I know you're, okay, Steve?
I think Chris, that's okay, Steve. You do the short straw, okay?
But you know what? That's okay. You want to introduce yourself, Steve?
Yeah, good evening. I think there's a few new faces since I was last here, so I'm Stephen Foster, Facilities Director. I've been here 7.5 years, and in my department also is Greg Roberts, who is Building Maintenance Supervisor, and Greg's been here about 5.5 years or so. So we are the Facilities Department. Just give you a brief overview for those of you who may be new to the facilities. Got 1 million square feet under our management, 24 buildings. About 80% of that inventory is with the schools, the balance being municipal buildings. Size it varies from an 800 square foot building up to a 300,000 square foot high school. So we've got everything in between that we manage on a daily basis. Age also is a little bit variant here too. We have buildings from the early 1800s up to 2018. So the average age there, if you look at it, is about 41 years if you take out those very old buildings that kind of drag your average down. So your building stock is around that 40-ish age. What do we do in facilities? Continuously, daily, we're responding to issues that occur in buildings. They could be through phone calls or emails, and we're continuously inspecting, evaluating the building components and systems, make sure we stay on top of things. There are some things that surprise you. We try to minimize those. We try to keep an eye on things that we know may be a problem coming up and keep them on the radar for future replacements, planned replacements. My goal is to not replace things on an emergency basis if I can all avoid it. I want to have a planned outage on a system, and that way we do it when don't disturb the occupants, and we pay a better price if we don't do it on an emergency basis. We monitor and track these issues, procure the contractors, materials to get it done, coordinate the contractors, and follow up with quality control, make sure they do it right. And as far as how we get these things done resource-wise, again, it's Greg and myself. We are outsourcing the vast majority of our repairs. Occasionally, we'll take on a project and self-perform, do it ourselves, but that's there's been a lot of it more recently, but we've got to watch ourselves. It's not manageable on a consistent basis going forward. So we will hire out to plumbers and painters and electricians, things like that. We have contracts with all of the major building subcontractors that we can tap into. They've all been bid out and procured, so we have them on call as we need them. We are high on preventive maintenance. We have mechanical systems that we have programs for to keep them maintained, keep them in good working order, increase their life expectancy by keeping them maintained. It involves your building envelope as well as the boilers and generators, et cetera. There's a big list there. We will get into some project management on smaller projects. We will ourselves take on certain size projects that don't bog us down, mostly in the summertime when the schools are out. Toilet room renovations, for instance. We can scope it out, design it, get the permits done, plan it, contractors in, and wrap it all up in-house. As I mentioned, we outsource most of our work here to contractors. Budget. Current budget, $141,000 in operating costs, $225,000 in capital. Most of the monies spent in this department are mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, MEP. And in the electrical is also fire alarm. That is 75% of my expenditures within the facilities department. Beyond that,
These fire alarms?
fire alarms,
Why is that?
they're part of the, I put that in electrical, so MEP,
Okay,
it's part of that
but it
mix.
includes, fire alarms includes, electrical includes fire alarms, but fire
Yes, it
alarms by
does.
themselves isn't 75% of what you spend.
No, not fire alarms, 75, but included in that,
Okay.
75%.
I misunderstood.
Yeah, is electrical, and in that is fire alarm systems.
Okay.
Usually replacement of those systems. There's also some project mix in there. For instance, this past year, we did a project at the Early Childhood Center, renovating that for the kindergarten, which came in this past summer.
What did you do there?
So there was some interior renovations to the existing ECC that rearranged the programming at what was the administrative offices, the entranceway, hallway, and a conference room. The existing building had to be reconfigured so it better aligned with the hallway access to the new building. And so it was a summertime kind of project, probably a 4 or 5 week project.
Okay.
Some of the other examples of what we did over the, within the budget were mechanical replacements. We did unit ventilator replacement at the Atkinson School, boiler replacement, air conditioner replacement. We also did some life safety systems work, namely fire alarms, as you just heard, replacing dated systems. Building envelope work is in here, roofing, waterproofing, weatherization, kind of projects. Also in here are those small renovation projects I talked about, the Early Childhood Center, toilet rooms. Embedded in here also is some energy, and some of this is utility incentivized LED lighting upgrades, for instance, at the middle school, steam trap replacements. On those, I get very large utility replacements, and sometimes under the Green Communities Program, the LED upgrades are, we don't pay a thing, so that's a good deal. Proposed going ahead, level funded operations budget. As you see this year, there's no increase there. Approximate breakdown on that is 85% of that operating budget is building repairs and maintenance. The balance of it is for cleaning services, which are also outsourced. Capital projects coming up. This is an increase in this year of $125,000. Some of the boiler, some of the projects involving that capital improvement are boiler, rooftop unit replacement, mechanical equipment, expanding the energy management system to include the new kindergarten building. That means that will be on the current energy management system that was put in place by Ameresco about 4 years ago.
Yep.
Retro commissioning of mechanical systems. This is something I'm looking closely into. This is more or less going back and tuning them up. Sometimes the settings go off here and you lose energy efficiency. So I'm going to apply for a grant through META, which is a DOER grant program that lets you study the efficiency of the recommissioning, and then apply for a grant through Green Communities. So hopefully we wouldn't pay anything to get it recommissioned is my goal there. Lighting upgrades are also included. Currently, there's a Green Community Special Projects, working with Laurie Burzlaff to get funded for a middle school lighting upgrade. Again, changing over to LEDs, state-of-the-art lighting, energy efficient. Also in here is more life safety work, carbon monoxide detection systems, fire alarm replacements, hot water systems. There'll be a new roof I would like to get installed at the senior center, and there is a toilet room upgrade planned also as well on that projects list for the coming year. So that's a short synopsis of the facilities. If there are any questions, I can help you.
Yeah, I have a question. Have you ever thought about installing solar panels to reduce the cost of energy?
There was a program that installed one at the high school years back. I think it was about 2010 it got installed. Beyond that time, I haven't been involved in that part of it. I do know perhaps it could be pursued through green communities, but I have not directly pursued it.
Okay.
We also get the benefit of the solar panels at Osgood Landing, that we're a part of that, and we actually generate, there's quite a bit of solar net metering credits that we get against our electric bills right now. So that's a big discount for us. So I think we're getting the most that we can by not actually physically having it on our buildings.
Okay.
Okay, so
So it does meet a major portion of the requirement?
right, and it's directly credited against our electric bills. There's probably 12 accounts at the school and 8 or 9 on the municipal side. So we are getting, and using it against the largest accounts that we have. So we're getting quite a credit there.
Thank you. Thanks.
Can I ask you a question about the Stevens estate? I had read in Andrew's comments that the maintenance that's in the foreseeable future was as much as several $1 million. Is that because it's an historical building and it's not as simple as knocking out a roof on a 40-year-old building? Does it have to stay within code? Or what drives that cost?
So you've got some dated systems there. The heating plant is steam, it's dated. Your other MEP systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing are also dated. So you're looking at trying to bring those systems up to what would be 2019. It adds to it. Doing work in a renovation on a historical building also has its incremental cost, as you can imagine. Trying to fish wires and pipes through finished areas without bothering them has some impact as well.
Okay.
So I think that's probably what he was speaking to in terms of the amount of dollars you'd have to spend on that location to bring it up to code or 2019.
So pretty much that building hasn't been touched since 1950 or 60 or?
Yeah, there's some old systems in here. It probably dates back to the time, I would assume, back to when BU operated that as a functional facility, and you're dating yourself back there to probably the 50s and 60s. So there's some very old items in there that just, they need attention.
Okay.
So
Thank
what
you.
I'd like to do is, a little later, have Lynn sort of brief us again on the Stevens Estate plans and where the future of that enterprise fund lies, so that you've got that, and you can actually add that to your part of the letter.
And I can stay very brief and tight in fewer words than were used last year.
That's right, that's right.
50%, I think you said, so.
50% to two-thirds, that's right.
I'll fit it in, don't worry.
I could ask a lot of questions, but Sasha, do you have a question at all?
I actually do. Have you previously, and I don't know, had additional staff do stuff in-house and you decided to outsource, or have you always outsourced some of your contractual maintenance, HVAC, maintenance, plumbing, whatever else? And has anyone done that analysis, whether or not it makes sense to have a few people in-house doing that work?
Well, this was discussed, and outsourcing has always been what I've done, because I didn't have much staff. And when you look at all the post-employment benefits, having that person on staff, I think the math has been done, and I think Andrew was probably the catalyst for that, saying, well, let's outsource it, and we don't have to have that other person on board, and we don't have those long-term, right, to worry about. So hence the outsourcing. You probably could pay less with having someone on staff, but then again, they're going to be with you for a while. You pay a little more when you're outsourcing, but it's once and done. If that's doesn't carry you.
So,
The need is not perennial, is that what you mean? And that's why you can hire somebody, get the work done, and then you are done. And then whenever there's a need, you can keep calling, right?
Well,
It's not a perennial thing, that's why you think it's not feasible, I mean, it's not really,
I think as long as you have the resources available to outsource it, you're not having that staff on board that you pay those long-term benefits for, I think is the mindset here. And being the financial person, I'll let Lynn chime in here, but that was the dialogue back when I talked to Andrew about this. We did hire Greg because I needed someone in the field, boots on the ground, so to speak,
understood, yeah.
who was right there managing the field staff, which is his primary function. Again, that and keeping the mechanical plant going, so he works well in that category. He has the capability to look at a problem make the right call to a contractor.
Make
Go on
sure
to
the
the-
work is done appropriately.
Exactly, and then tell them what's the problem sometimes. They show up, they can fix it quickly, he's on to the next problem, rather than him getting his head in the engine, which sometimes he has a tendency to do, so he's capable, but I like to keep him on the management side of that, and that way he just calls the contractor to have them perform the work.
Because the long-term liability of bringing in, hiring staff for every one of these functions, HVAC, electrical, you know, you're not gonna find one person that's gonna have all of those skills.
Is there one specific set of items that you find is most costly, given the age and
Mechanical
group of
systems.
your properties?
You really gotta have someone who knows mechanical systems. And that is what you wanna have a good handle on. There's 24 buildings and everyone has a different system, and you gotta stay with it. Moving things break, and it's like your car, you gotta keep it well-tuned. So that is the one area that, and Greg's good at it. He keeps an eye on it, and he knows what to do, who to call to stay in front of it.
Right, so we look at the most cost-effective way to manage this, and we've found to alleviate the increase clearly on the OPEB liability is to outsource it. It's a contract with them, but we only use them when we need them. It's not like they're here every day. So we're only paying for that short period of time that they're here. And we
Right.
might not need them, you never know. So you might not need them every day. It
Right.
could be once a month, it could be once a week, and it could be one of the different industries that, you know.
So there isn't one thing that you can say, okay, we know
It's
that
constant.
we're gonna need, like, for example, you have to change all your HVAC filters or something. We know that this plus a certain other thing is gonna happen every year, the specific scope, and we could do it less by hiring someone. The answer you're saying with OPEB is no.
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Do you have a particular tool, software to help you manage all of the resources, facilities, mechanicals, electrical that you're responsible for?
What we've done is develop in-house a people farm with Chris's help and Joanne Lane's help. It's a form that, and Chris can explain a little better here where he got it, but essentially, we put all of the work items or building issues on this people farm system. And at any time, I can go in and find out what building it is, what date it was, what the problem is, and we track it, we log it. When it's done, we take it off. When we have to add one, we add it on there. But it's all developed in-house. A few years back, I was looking at a system that would do it off the shelf, so to speak, and it was through School Dude, and we had that system for a number of years. And this proved to be a much more economical solution and did exactly what we wanted, but no more. It is a useful tracking tool. Didn't cost a lot, but Chris can speak to it. I only heard that it didn't cost a lot or a lot less than what I was considering. And it's worked well for us. It's putting a system together for what we need, tailored to us. And we could change it at any time, too. It's the beauty of it.
Does that also maintain, so you're basically, that's like for a work order or something, that's what you're putting in your logging? Does
That
it
is
save
correct.
those?
Logging and tracking.
I can speak to that one, but there's some integrations pieces, so.
Awesome.
Excuse me, Chris?
I'll make sure to
Oh,
touch on that.
okay, yeah. So, yes, if we had a building issue, we log it in, and we track it. And every day, take a look at it. And every day, it's kind of a triage, you know, what's
Yeah, of course.
really has to be done, or what can be, wait. And it's a useful tool in that you can see it at a glance, you can sort on it. I think it's great for our use, because it's tailored to just what we need,
Great.
versus something off the shelf that might be more complicated, and you don't need some of the features.
Does it look out months, years, as far as trying to plan when maintenance, not emergency, but how you can plan, you know, like me, I know every 35, 4,000 miles of my car, I gotta get an oil changed.
Right.
And I got a thing flashes up and says, it's time.
So we set up prompts in this, and that we know we have to be looking after certain equipment after a certain amount of years. And prompts we set in there so that we say, gee, make sure you check on that boiler, or, you know, take a look at that roof, it's getting to be 20, 25 years old. So those prompts are in there, and it's a good reminder, because if you got
Oh,
that
yeah.
many buildings, you'll forget sometimes if you don't have it.
Like,
That's why I wanted him last. Stephen, also I noticed that your budget's up a little bit on the building repairs and maintenance, so what is happening, what is planned to happen this year? Is some sort of emergency, the unplanned planned
Okay.
emergency?
Okay, so I migrated the dollars from what was, there was a smaller component in there of capital items, capital outlay in the budget, and I put everything into building repairs and maintenance, because it always seems as always shifting dollars around within my budget to cover building repairs and maintenance. And I'm looking to perhaps more of those capital dollars go towards paid out of the capital account. So if I have, hot water heaters I gotta buy or things like that, those costs would go to that.
I get it.
So I got enough money to fix things.
I get it, okay.
Yeah, just a reality.
You basically put it all in one line, I get it.
Right.
Yep.
So he doesn't have to move it around.
Okay. Who's responsible for the Amoresco?
I monitor the energy part of it, and their contract has been terminated. So what we do is we take a look at the energy performance by using what's called Mass Energy Insight. It's a online tool developed that shows all of our buildings, the amount of energy usage, the history, broken down by utility. A very good tool to use and see where you're spending your energy, what buildings you might have to improve upon. It's also a good tool that we use when we're doing reports to green communities. It's a good energy report that Laurie uses also when she's sending her reports in.
So clearly it haven't had kept my ear to the town here. Amoresco's contract is expired or terminated?
Correct. Yeah, I
No,
think it was
which
2
one's-
year ago, if I have that right. And again, they,
Did we terminate? I thought we expired, it expired.
no, they provided quarterly reports. And we saw that when we met our energy goals, the reports got pretty much the same, and there wasn't
No
mean,
more, no more.
wasn't a
use of
value,
data.
There's no
okay?
value added.
So if we're not getting some value from it, why pay for it? Was the logic, and Andrew and I talked about it, and yes, it was terminated.
Okay.
And we surpassed our energy goal savings on that project, if you remember. So we track it using Mass Energy Insight and take a look at that every so often to see where the energy usage is going.
Okay.
I have a question related to the insurance. I'm sure all our buildings are insured,
Mhm.
with, whatever
Property
the standards
liability.
is.
Yep.
Do they come and do audits and check, how fire safe, improve the buildings are? and-
Maya comes in
yeah.
and doesn't,
Yeah, Meyer, Mass Interlocal Insurance Agency, used to do those up until about 2 to 3 years ago, and they stopped doing them. Why, I don't know, but it used to be once a year they come around and tour the buildings and give you a list of items they observed. That no longer happens.
So in a case there is damage, could the insurance company say, hey, you neglected a building, this and this and this was missing? I mean, isn't that what the audit normally tells you? To keep an eye on things, and so,
well, I don't know that, I don't know that they can reject something that they think we didn't take care of. I mean, that's the purpose of paying the insurance. They don't, you got a house insurance, they don't come in and inspect every year. Could be the same issue. I know we're in much bigger volume than that, but,
What they used to find was a lot of safety concerns.
right, not,
I found.
Yeah.
And so a lot of them were safety related, your fire extinguisher isn't up to date, or, there's an electrical problem they might have seen.
storage runs too full.
Yeah,
things.
correct, yeah, and so I think going forward, when we're getting into this OSHA compliance thing, that might actually take the place of some of the things that the insurance company saw in their reports, which is being rolled out in the next, few months, Lynn, the OSHA with the assistant town manager, might be capturing a few of those things.
I always thought it was a useful tool.
Mm-hmm.
For
We,
the insurance companies?
yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, because then it puts some,
kind of a free,
Yep.
freebie, somebody is
comes in and
different set
reviews
of
it and
eyes
gives us,
and
provides
sees
us
things.
feedback.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Does our public safety people do that at all? Exchange it?
Yeah, they do. Every year, I tour the buildings with the building inspector. Usually, the electrical inspector accompanies us as well, and a member of the fire department will issue certificates of inspection for these facilities. And during that tour, if anything comes up, that's a problem. It gets listed on a punch list, so to speak. You get the punch list done, you get your certificate of inspection. So yes, that's done on an annual basis.
Internally.
Yes, correct.
Are you involved at all? I mean, you hear now so many times, some towns, they really, school safety, with all the things we hear, and hopefully never happen here in North Andover, but, bad people doing bad things, really almost making a school now like little, compounds. Are you involved in that at all, about that safety, security, and
Only on a peripheral
what's
basis.
the latest on the market, and
Yeah, so I
what to
think
do?
I would look to Chris and probably the police department to get into that security a lot more, but where I might tie into that is, for instance, if the locks on the building aren't the proper locks for the classroom lockdown, for instance.
Right.
You need proper functioning access systems. Those sort of things I will get into and implement, but they'd come based on the need from the,
Public safety.
yeah, public safety, police department would say, well, we need different locks. They call me.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how proactive are we,
Yeah, that
Because
would
when
actually
something
be-
happens, then suddenly, you go through and say, oh, this was missing and this was missing, and it's a very unfortunate situation at that point,
Very. Yep.
So how well prepared are we,
As
I
Chief
defer
Gray
to the
probably speak to
school-
that.
The
and-
school and public safety, they work together on that.
Hmm.
So they would be able to speak to it in more detail.
Okay.
I don't want to speak on something that I don't have the full information on. But has the school department come to you? Already met with you, right?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, we can get further information and get back to you.
My last question. Are you involved, will you be involved, have you been involved with the facilities master plan? And this will be facilities master plan too,
In terms of developing that
in
plan?
for terms of developing it and even helping it to execute it.
I imagine going forward, I've asked to be involved, and I think Dee Casey's probably gonna put me, we talked about it on the Master Plan 2 group. I've been somewhat involved on the projects to date. So on a limited basis, I think is what I wanna say.
Okay.
I think his input would be welcomed and needed.
Absolutely. I mean, we're talking
so-
about touching all the elementary schools, and
Right,
who touches them more than you perhaps? Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So what I requested those projects that have gone forth so far is a copy of the drawings during the development phase. So I'd roll out the drawings, and Greg and I pour over them. And it's kind of good, the mix between Greg and I. He's really into systems and knows more of those than I would say, more structurally, architecturally. So complementing skill sets here, and we get a list of comments together and feed them back to the architect on each project. I would not be sitting necessarily at each meeting, and that's why I said yes on a limited basis. I wasn't at every project meeting during the job.
Any other questions for Stephen?
What's your favorite building?
One, two, can I tell you my least favorite?
You can start with go all the way up.
The newest building must be the
They're all unique. They're somewhat alike in some aspects, but they're all got their little quirks and things. You gotta learn about them and treat them accordingly. They're unique. It's a good mix.
Your response was well said politically. And to your credit, Thomas, I was like, who's your favorite child?
Oops. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Stephen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
Next up to bat is Chris, and I remember way back when, it was just a little budget. It was a little nothing, everyone was getting desktops and disparate systems and whatnot. Probably back when you started with still modems around, right?
He's improved our technology tremendously.
And to me, it's not unlike facilities, it's a structure, it is the infrastructure. And it can do it can do some great things for us, it can do some serious hard things, bad things to us if it's not working properly. So your role has become, in my mind, one of the most important ones, like a CIO kind of level of responsibility. So, what good things have you done for us?
So just to, I'm Chris McClure, the IT director. I'm coming up on 4 years here in North Andover. Just to touch on the topic of the database Steve had mentioned, I think it ties into a philosophy of integration. So, for example, there is sort of the issue tracking piece, but that goes along with a facility database that stores information on all of the buildings, along with major systems, et cetera. And then that links into a GIS, spatial mapping component as well. And then he had mentioned, some of the inspection work done with, say, police and fire around that. So that feeds into, one of our guiding principles of common operating picture, so that this information isn't being stored in silos that are accessible only by a few people. It's being stored in real time for everyone who needs access to it, together. So systems like the facilities database and these things can be accessed by police, fire, building, et cetera, along with other systems of that type, so that we're building that sort of integration and ability to make decisions based on that data, and then creating that institutional knowledge going back and archiving information. So, and then just before I forget, you were mentioning the insurance through Maya. We also took advantage this year in, they have the cyber insurance now through Maya, with some liability insurance around that, around breaches, data loss, et cetera. So we made sure that we completed the necessary process to participate in that. So we've got some coverage in that respect.
Do we have coverage now?
Yeah, and it's a new offering. It was a new offering through Maya. And so I think before I get into the specifics, I think conceptually there are a few things that put us in a good place. One is, to your point about the evolution and this field, I think we see it as a process. So there is no end. I think we have good practices and we have good reviews, and we look at things on a continual basis for constant improvement, vigilance, et cetera, with the idea that there is no done. There is no done with this process. And I think the way our budget is structured, we have revolving improvements that help us get to that point where we realize that we're always going to be at risk and we always have to improve. And I think we're also, though, the beneficiary now of several years of stability and being able to manage, the practical stuff day to day very well, so that we are able, I would joke with Andrew a lot that the problems that we have now are good problems to have in that, because if you're thinking about that, it means that a lot of the structural stuff is not bubbling up and causing problems. So we'll come back to that, but let's just go over some of the highlights. And in that vein, so last year we were awarded $50,000 to do document scanning. I think we talked about that. This year we put in for 2 community compact grants around security and continuity, one focusing on general government continuity of operations, and one focusing specifically on IT security analysis, developing a gap analysis plan, et cetera, in sort of a traditional sense. So we got about $60,000 total for the state for both of those. We're getting assistance both from the state and MEMA on the continuity plan, on the cybersecurity and just general IT security piece. So I think that's an example of that sort of constant evaluation about how we're doing, and not just relying on our own sort of guidance in that, but looking to outside professionals and other agencies to sort of get a benchmark for how we're doing.
So let's put a little pause in that particular area, and we'll expand upon it later too. But for example, what are you getting for that money?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you buying hardware? Are you buying software? Are you
Yeah,
buying
we'll come back into that.
knowledge?
So again, that was grant money from the state. We'll get back into what
Okay.
those very specific statements of work around.
You lead
that.
away.
Yeah. So some boring stuff we migrated. This was just one of those kind of thorn pieces, but we had been operating on the ancient state CAMA system, which is the assessing system the state of Massachusetts supported for years and years and years and years, which was being basically discontinued. So we migrated to the Patriot assessing system, which is one of the industry standards, which I think also marks a trend in what we've tried to do in IT, which is try to go to the things that are industry standard in terms of what we do, so that it's easier both to get support, but also find people who know how to operate the systems, et cetera, in terms of hiring people, and just trying to be up to date in that respect. Again, from a security standpoint, In addition to, rotating our, as you were saying, standard computer, laptop workstations on a rolling basis every year. We also try and focus on major infrastructure components every year, again, on a rolling basis. And so this year, the focus was on the firewalls. So again, upgraded the entire firewall infrastructure, evaluated that, made improvements, et cetera. Again, so the benefit of new hardware, new software, and fresh eyes, sort of looking at how those policies are managed, et cetera, along with some other benefits to that. A huge piece that the timing was not ironic with the gas crisis. We had identified and worked with public safety for putting in a more powerful emergency alerting system. So we moved to a product called Rave, which again is industry standard. It's nationwide. There's some really powerful benefits for being part of that community, with some more powerful benefits for reaching out to people during crisis. But one of the key pieces, and a piece that we did not have, was the Smart 911 component, where people, and so we have over 2,000 what are called public safety profiles, where people voluntarily provide information about their household, maybe special health needs, mobility issues, life support issues, pets, et cetera. And when you call into 911 with a number registered to that system, dispatch gets that additional information in real time and can then use that to make decisions about what hospital you might want to go to, saving your pet. And it can also be used during emergencies to target people that might be at risk. So if we have, God forbid, something approaching like a gas crisis or a weather event, the police can proactively look at reaching out to people who may have identified as being at risk. And so that, is sort of a huge benefit to what we're doing. And again, the participation with over 2,000 profiles in, the first 6 months now was a huge success on that. We worked with the town clerk's office this year on kind of a cool project to bring in electronic poll pads. And they were actually demoed at the special town meeting, the marijuana town meeting, which was as big a town meeting as we'll probably ever see, and worked flawlessly. We've built some systems around that and some training, and that's something that we're going to continue to use with the town clerk's office, just to make check-in at town meeting and other election events a little easier. We, IT department, served on the cable access committee this year to negotiate the Verizon cable contract. So we were able to, negotiate with NACAM an increase from a 2.7% of gross revenue to a 4% for Verizon, just bringing in more revenue for NACAM. And also there was a counter clause in our Comcast agreement, so that also triggered an increase. So that was pretty important with their new studio and sort of their increased role. And there's also attached to that, because NACAM uses the Town Fiber Network for its video origination, that when they did away with the iNet years ago, there's capital funding that comes to the town that we share with NACAM for the maintenance of some of that fiber infrastructure. So that's been a good benefit to the town in maintaining that dark fiber network. Another cool project, we worked with the town clerk and the planning offices to codify all of the general and zoning bylaws into a nice app that's available on the website on your mobile phone. So there was a bit of historical work, going back and making sure that the bylaws were consistent to the beginning of time. They had the latest version, the language was consistent, and then that was adopted at town meeting in the spring, the last town meeting. And now that's available in a nice, searchable, hyperlinked way on the website and in the mobile app. So those are the kind of projects we like working on. Another thing related to security, and that was important during the gas crisis, is through our town cell plan. We are now using a priority emergency calling a system. And the police chief actually had to use this during the gas crisis, so that our town cell phones, if in huge volume, if everyone's trying to make a cell call at the same time, actually can make a priority call, to be able to connect when it's difficult for most people to connect. So that's a service that all our town cell phones use as part of that emergency and continuity planning. And a piece, I think that was really year-defining for everyone was the Columbia gas crisis. So IT, I think, played an instrumental role one of the new things, and timing again was uncanny in this. We had been really developing our social media presence for the last several years, IT along with the town manager. And one of the ideas that we'd put forward, just a few months prior, was bringing on a social media intern for 10 hours a week, just to have some ownership and sort of polish up the message. And we brought on Sarah Brush to do that, and that piece was instrumental in really defining how we communicated during the gas crisis, and really set us apart to the point where North Andover now is actually giving 2 public information officer presentations, one in Middlesex and one nationwide, on how we communicated during the gas crisis so effectively.
Talk about a name that became well-known in the area, Sarah, so. it's like,
Yeah, I mean,
wow.
just phenomenal job. And, that came out of that idea of, having built that social media audience, prioritizing it, and then really just wanting to polish it up a bit and have some ownership around it. And, continues to be a strong, an invaluable piece there. We installed cell boosters at the youth center and the public works, just to meet some needs for some problem areas, around safety, so that kids can make a call from in the building, or during the snowstorms we had improved cell communication. We worked, as we do with every building, to connect the Ann Bradstreet Early Childhood Center to the town network and get all the networking needs there met. Yeah, there's a couple boring ones on here, but okay. So getting into goals for next year. So again, we talk about the big infrastructure piece. So this year, we're focusing on the core to the phone system. Again, just sort of proactively to make sure that's up to date and that sort of rolls on. We're doing some smart city stuff with the SimCom and the LED lights, which is kind of cool and gets into a whole data focused component that we can talk about it in a bit. We've already connected the new NACAM studio to the town fiber and have that operational. So the big piece, and then I can segue from that into some of your security piece, is we are also rolling out a social engineering subscription training package for all of our employees on an ongoing basis. So security obviously is important to everybody. But much like what Shrek said about ogres, it's like an onion, right? So there's lots of layers, and it's made up of lots of little pieces. So obviously there's the hardware component, policy, et cetera. But the biggest risk is really around social engineering, training, and making sure that employees are able to recognize threats, phishing, spear phishing, et cetera. So we've started with some basic training, and we've actually, for the small fee of $5,000 a year, it's a perpetual subscription to social engineering training that integrates into our existing web and email piece, so that there's an initial onboarding component where any new employee that gets started automatically gets a package, a walkthrough, et cetera. There's a browser integration. The key is it's sort of random continual training, so that employees randomly get targeted email sort of stressing different topics, to the point where it customizes it to the employee so that people can't cheat and tell people when it's coming. And they estimate that it takes about 6 months really to get somebody trained and aware, but then there's huge metrics in terms of the impact of this piece. I always like to joke that in security, there's a Greek saying that our safety is in our anonymity. And that's become less and less true for cities and towns, where cities and towns were really not targeted, not that long ago. And between that and honestly the gas crisis raised our profile, so we're aware of that as well. And it's really that targeted attack to employees, et cetera. So there are software fixes and layers that, around that in terms of intelligence and, looking at validated email servers and, comparing known senders and all that stuff. But it really, the biggest vulnerability is around that employee training. And I think that is one of the huge focuses this year as well. But
So the monitoring software isn't like monitoring what people are doing on the internet. It's monitoring what's coming in.
So the training isn't really so much on monitoring. It's more on behavior. So our monitoring is multi-layered. So obviously, we have firewalls, we have antivirus, We have, spam and virus monitoring on the attachments. And, because we use G Suite, we have the advantage of all of their security features, they get sort of rolled out, to the point where, email servers are validated. And it's sort of, one of the tricks in spear phishing is to do spoofing or to sort of pretend that you're somebody else. So one of the things that it does is it knows, for example, that cmclerk@northandoverma.gov should be sending from the server it knows, and if it gets an email from a server that's not that, it's probably a bad email. So that's sort of, monitoring, level of, and there's a lot of behavior, observations. So even just things that are anomalous, somebody sends an email from a computer, they typically don't, or from a location, they typically don't, or that sort of thing, and that all gets put together and to look at a behavior pattern and start assessing risk. In addition to, all of the software, antivirus, monitoring on top of that. But the real big piece is no matter how good all that is, it's always possible to send someone an email that tricks them to click on a link and enter their username and password, or, in some cases, approve a bank transfer or things like that, which also, back to the onion metaphor, gets into why that, 100% reliance on technology is not good either. That's where some of the policy and procedures and things come in, where there needs to be a human step in some of this stuff. So either two-factor authentication with some things, or a phone call to somebody, before approving things or beyond a certain threshold, and that sort of gets wrapped into the training too. And it's just not reliance on an all or nothing type system. So.
Do you have different layers of security therefore? For example, I'm sure within the accounting function, the payroll is probably protected a little more stronger than the core accounting system, but even the core accounting system is probably more protected than other parts of your databases out there.
Right, yes.
So we do have different layers and things like that. Any chance of that ever being broken through different ways, or
Sure.
like the
Everything,
phishing?
everything. I mean, through phishing, it would be hard, but I mean, again, never say never. The Pentagon gets hacked. So I think we can do all we can do. I think I got a common sense, layered approach. Part of it sort of is based on not putting all your eggs in one basket in some cases, so that, a breach in one area is not necessarily going to, cripple you everywhere. That's in a lot of cases. If you look at some of the worst cases where this happens, it is a multi-system failure where a lot of the little things were ignored or just not done. Computer hardware that's not been updated in 15 years, computer systems that haven't been updated, lack of antivirus, lack of IT staff, an over-reliance, again, sort of putting all your eggs in one basket, an over-reliance in one provider or one strategy. So, for example, one of the risks with the encryption, the ransomware type stuff, is you don't have backups for long enough in a lot of cases, because it's insidious, where it encrypts, but it does it in a way that you might not know for 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
And then when you go to restore your backups have all been encrypted. So, and one of the things we've done, in addition to our pretty resilient and redundant local backup, is we've started also utilizing the Amazon cloud as more of a long-term, one more off-site, but also the ability to keep backups for longer in sort of a cold storage, scenario, so that it just extends that retention period and it extends that recoverability in different variables.
Speaking of the cloud, are we using a lot of the cloud so that we become vulnerable to someone slicing through that fiber cable on Main Street kind of scenario, or do we have enough resources internally that someone can still get paid?
Yeah, so we'd have what you would call a hybrid cloud, which is pretty common. So we have a very resilient fiber network locally. We have resources that we run locally over our network where it makes sense. We have, as I've said before, all clouds aren't created equal. So I think the clouds that we've invested in are secure, reliable, resilient. And then we also have multiple ways of connecting to the cloud internally, but we also have external ways of connecting to the cloud under different scenarios. So we have mobile data, we have VPNs, we have other ways of connecting for some of those critical systems. If we had an extended internet outage or an extended network outage, those systems can still be accessed.
Okay.
Just a quick question about, we're talking about the employees of the town and how they have to be trained. Obviously, that's one of your most vulnerable points, right? Somebody new getting in and getting things that they're clicking or shouldn't be clicking. My company signed on with a new IT company. One of the first things they did was they set us up with this resource where they actually send you spoofing things. I just was curious whether you had engaged in, or you do engage in anything like that with your new employees so that they randomly
Well,
get,
the system I was describing does just that,
just that, okay.
yeah.
so they get.
And then it grades you.
Yes, it grades
It
you, and then
grades
you
you.
get a report, like, who is the person that needs a little bit more.
But it also sort of has its own intelligence where it will then start remediating based on how somebody does. So if somebody's not doing well, they're all going to get some remedial training, and they're going to get maybe more
Yeah.
test email.
Now, a little bit to what Tim was talking about, it seemed like, also what I've been through is disaster recovery. Do you actually have, you must, a formal disaster recovery plan in case, like either you lose all the fiber optics or you have a fire in town hall or the servers are,
Right, yeah, and so,
melt or.
yes, and back into your question of the grant and how that money's being used. So in the case of the continuity, the product really is a master plan, a continuity master plan. And that one isn't purely IT focused. Obviously, IT is a component of it, but how does government operate if town hall is closed down for 3 months? Or how does, if, under these different scenarios, understanding the roles of the departments, accessing information, et cetera. So part of that is formalizing that sort of continuity plan, which is pretty rare in government. And then the security piece is, similar to what we did with like the bylaw codification of looking at our existing plans, making sure that they're up to date, they're accurate, they're good. At the same time, doing traditional, penetration testing, sort of basically trying to hack us and then see, sort of where the weaknesses are, and then putting together, both the written plans for disaster recovery, but also sort of a master plan, gap analysis that would advise funding going forward in terms of where we need to invest money, training, et cetera. So the product of both processes is, a pretty comprehensive master plan document that we would then, work to put into effect.
Would that be something for the next year or something that,
It will be every year forever.
that's right, you say it's an ongoing thing, right?
So,
The grant is the initial kickoff.
right, but
Yeah,
but the idea is it's a master plan. So, and then, and when you check off everything on that plan, then you do another one. And
So if we had a fire in the town hall right now, would we be hurting a little bit?
I mean, yeah, that would be a really bad day, but we wouldn't.
Be able to-
That'd be a really bad day, but from a data standpoint,
Would be okay.
So you could
We'd
set
be-
up shop in another building.
mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's really the thing, is like, can you just relocate and
Right.
start setting up a headquarters in a different space and
Right.
still have access?
Right,
And all our financial data is
Right.
stored with the software company.
in the cloud, yeah,
In the cloud.
Yeah,
And we can access
Right.
it all from home
right.
through VPN.
Yeah, and part of that has been, yes, with that hybrid model of, resiliency, redundancy here, but also, one of the things we've done over the last 4 years is put a laptop in every division head, department head as their workstation for that mobility, so that if we had, from a continuity standpoint, the town hall was closed or inaccessible, people couldn't still do their work pretty much, from anywhere securely, as part of that practical piece of the planning. And we saw a lot of that again during the gas crisis, where a lot of these systems that we put in place over the last 4 years just worked, where people could communicate, from a information sharing standpoint, from an institutional knowledge standpoint, without really thinking about or operating in a way that was different than their day-to-day
so abstracted and more.
piece. And that was, kind of a good proof of,
So what lessons learned did you come away from the Columbia gas crisis that, you're like, I'd give myself a B or B plus for what we were able to do, but we could get an A if we did X, Y, and Z. Your turn.
yeah, so I think that thinking sort of advised how we approached the Community Compact, grant, was to sort of look at, and, and again, everyone did a phenomenal job. And I think people were also acutely aware that there were places that went well because we were lucky. just the disaster didn't impact certain ways that would have made things, more challenging. So, for example, we didn't have to close the town hall. The town buildings, for the most part, were unaffected by, the gas crisis. We weren't dealing with 3 months with no town hall. We weren't dealing with, some of these other pieces. And I think we know how we would have managed it, but I think some of that needs to be formalized. So I think, to your point of, I think we have a lot of little plans, and I think we have, a lot of sort of procedures and things in sort of loose collections. And I think what we need to do a better job of is really codifying that and getting it standardized. And, one of the themes has been, that concept of continuity, succession planning. Again, one of my favorite concepts of institutional knowledge, so that we're capturing what we know as we go, and that people can sort of come in and out, and it's not that sort of siloed approach where things are in people's heads or things are in people's file drawers or they're in an inbox. And we had started down that road, and I think we're in a good place in that respect. And a lot of that really just comes to formalizing some of the way we see emergency management and expanding the way we see emergency management beyond police, fire, emergency management to include finance, IT, continuity, et cetera, and really just broadening that circle.
You have IT drill as well.
Yeah. But in emergency management, one of the things you typically do, I'd like to see more, is what they call a tabletop exercise. So you sort of have a pretend day where everyone comes together, you sit, you pretend that something's happening, and you kind of walk through those. Yeah, you walk through those pieces, and I think we could all benefit from more of those.
So the servers that you have, do you have automatic backup, or you actually have to manually back up the servers?
Of course, it's automatic.
For all the departments? So you have a master server, and then you have servers for individual departments, or?
Oh, yeah, we're well beyond that. We have, locally we have what's called hyper-converged servers. So it's sort of, if you're familiar with like virtualization, it's the next generation of virtualization. So we have right now 2 hyper-converged clusters in 2 different locations that then are also backing up, to other third locations, also the cloud. So we put in and these are on the replacement plan, the 2 clusters in the last 2 project cycles. But one of the benefits of doing this over, say, a traditional like storage array, so typically what we do is we take our production storage environment, and that becomes the backup storage environment, as things progress. But the advantage of hyperconverge is it has both the compute and the storage integrated. So when that gets downgraded to the storage environment, you actually have a backup compute and storage environment in addition to your redundant. So basically you're getting more places to restore your servers onto, the ability to do more testing, the ability to do sort of a spare tire type model. So it's very efficient. But yeah, so obviously, there's backup routines that get monitored, and the way it happens today is very efficient in the way they deduplication and manage the data, et cetera. And then the new thing we added this year was the automation of backing up certain things into the cloud, in addition to the local backup, just for the reasons we talked about.
So you have responsibility for all IT, school, municipal.
Yeah.
And where I'm going with this is oftentimes when we talk about employees, sometimes it's referencing to the municipal side of the house.
Mhm.
I assume that the employees that we're talking about who get this training get pinged periodically include the school employees, correct?
Right now, I'm not sure. But we all use the same Google platform. That would be my.
I'm not talking about security here,
Yeah.
though. I mean, are they subject to the same security protocols as the rest of the municipal employees?
At different levels. So in terms of the structure, we have sort of the superstructure, network infrastructure core that the town owns and really acts, in some ways almost like a service provider to the school in terms of maintaining the firewalls, maintaining the internet connections, maintaining the phone system, maintaining most of the core. We collaborate, so because of the heavy curriculum focus of the schools, there are some differences. So we are more akin, say, to the business offices in the school. We have a much more sort of homogeneous way that we deal with that. One of the benefits with the students is because it's entirely Chrome-based, it's a 100% Chromebook based environment in a completely segregated network. So they're not even riding on the same business system that we're riding on. They're not having the same physical network that we're on, the way they connect. And the Chrome security is all managed centrally, through the Google Apps with the school. So there's some physical segregation around some of that in terms of the way it interacts with the town system. And because of the native security on some of that, it's a different animal. But we coordinate with that.
Is there any asset?
Sorry, because that's another huge level of employees who would have to be trained. So they're on the Chromebooks also?
Yeah, so, and again, I've said this in the past, we have a phenomenal working relationship with the school here. Mike Grant and I, have a great, we're exactly on the same page in terms of all this. Obviously, I'm a Google fan. Mike is. I've never seen a school district embrace it the way this school district has, and is really seeing the benefits of that in terms that they haven't compromised the vision. And it makes a lot of things possible that aren't possible if you're doing other environments. So one, from a cost perspective, it's a lot less expensive to run 100% Chromebooks, to utilize the Google platform that they get for free, and really to maximize that and take advantage of it. And so, if Mike's able to do it with Google or a Chromebook, he's doing it.
Yep.
And I think that makes a huge difference. I'm completely on the same page in that respect. And the teachers, the same way.
That's good, that makes sense.
So there's different degrees of risk, therefore, and I'm thinking about, the school has assets within their IT system that they have to protect. Yours is the domain around the municipality is different, including the police and fire. Are the schools well protected?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
One word.
Yes. Now, we can improve, like always. And again, what I'll say is, to the extent that we are sharing with the school, we are. So any server resources, the school also, because of the nature of what they do, they're far more homogenous in what they do than the town. The nature of the town, we're split up just because it's like having several different companies. So there's, 4 people in the assessor's department. What they do is very different than, what the Board of Health does, and there's these little pockets. So the school, because they're so homogenized, have been able to go to the cloud at a faster rate than we have, with fewer products, and they've been able to standardize around that. So it's a little different on that respect. Anything that can run on a server that the school is using, it's hosted on our hyperconverged infrastructure. So the school isn't maintaining their own servers. The school isn't maintaining that infrastructure. The town does, and we cooperate around all of that. So we have control over that in the same way we would.
Yeah, that was great.
Our
when that came in.
servers.
I remember when that happened. It was just a wonderful thing.
Probably a good feeling then. I'm sure it was communicated. Sometimes with information overflow, you just don't hear it or see it. So how do you get to be part of one of these 2,000 profiles in the rave?
Oh.
I mean, you mentioned it, and I go, what a great idea for people who have a health issue, or
Yeah, so.
or they got a favorite dog they don't want to lose in a fire, kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to the town website, on the bottom of every page, there's a Smart 911 icon. You click on that and you sign up.
That's easy.
Phil actually has sent an email out to all
Yeah.
to enroll in the Smart 911.
I think I've already done
And
it.
there's a mobile.
Yeah, I have already
yeah.
done that, yeah.
There's a
Just didn't know what you were doing.
No, but I just don't, I mean, it was, when it first came out, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm doing that. I mean, you just.
There's a mobile app too.
Yeah.
And one of the cool things about Smart 911, it being a national company, is that, so not every town uses it, but if you're traveling and you're driving through another Smart 911 community, you can actually receive alerts based on your proximity. So if there's a gas spill or something that's going on, you can get it. But if you call 911 in another jurisdiction, you use a Smart 911, they can also get your profile,
Cool.
locate you, and assist you. So it's part of, like, being part of this collaborative.
Who's your number 2?
In terms of person? So that's,
Besides your, I'm sorry.
yeah. So,
Your spouse, I'm sure, but it's
so I was actually thinking, when we were talking to Steve about contractors, it's interesting because there's been a few articles about the way, comparing the way North Andover IT and, say, Andover IT operates. I think much like the way we have a hybrid model with our servers, we have a hybrid model in terms of staffing. So Dave Brodeur is my network manager. He's been with the town 4 years. We also have a system admin and an administrative assistant. I think we do a good job really focusing on creating that concept of institutional knowledge, so storing things in a central place and making sure that there's a training and documentation on sort of how to access stuff. So one of the things I enjoy about North Andover is I can take a vacation and feel pretty comfortable that things are going to be taken care of. At the same time, and I think this goes to your question about how do we future-proof ourselves as we proceed, as good as any one IT person is, the landscape in IT is so complex and so diverse and so risk-heavy now. It really relies on having good vendor relationships and good professional services to manage that. And similar to what facilities talks, I think it's essential that you have that good core boots on the ground, because as good as these consultants and vendors can be, I believe in visioning. And I think unless you're on the ground talking to people, seeing the culture of the organization and sort of have some passion and investment in the organization, you can't lead the organization, and you can't, there's one thing to sort of keep the servers running, another thing to sort of imagine where the town, and introduce web services, et cetera. At the same point, I think it's more efficient to keep that group small, well-trained, acting, as direct support for your employees, and also sort of playing interpreter between the employees and these vendors. But one of the things that the vendors will give you with the right relationships is some of this continuity planning, because you're not dealing with one person. You're dealing with a professional organization that has that institutional knowledge and can survive and give you some of that continuity. So as we have turnover, you're not going to be out of luck because your network manager left and took everything he knew with them. That's been documented and sort of, maintained. And I always use the model too. Again, so you're not paying for the OPED, but you're also getting a lot more for your money. The employees are very valuable, but in terms of technology spending, if I can spend, say, $25,000 with a vendor, if I were to spend $25,000 on a piece of hardware, I'd get exactly $25,000 worth of stuff, or I'd get exactly $25,000 worth of a person. If I'm spending $25,000 with a firm, that's buying me database engineers, software engineers, network engineers, people who are experts in their field, and thousands and thousands. And in the case of Google, that $25,000 is buying you a share into $1 billion infrastructure that you can't sustain it. So I think the balance is that hybrid model for staffing as well.
So, any other questions for Chris? Again, I applaud what you've done over the last 4 years. This is it's been great. It's been great watching you, and I feel bad having to call you up or message you going, I can't get in. So that's why I ask who your number 2 is, so I can follow that person instead.
Well, we have a whole ticketing system, so it goes right in.
We're fortunate to have Chris. He's brought us a long ways from where we were 4 years ago.
Absolutely.
And now we are the trendsetters. People want to know how we got to where we are, and they all want to follow. So we are fortunate because we are way ahead of a lot of other communities.
Well, one of the things I've noticed, you showed again tonight, is how much you love your job, and that really shows, Chris. And so it's like, if you love your job, you never have to go to work kind of thing. And clearly you haven't been to work in a while, so.
He's very enthusiastic
Yeah.
for his job.
Yep.
Means a lot. He does a good
So.
job.
You just have to pretend you understand what he's talking about.
I understand some. This ultra super fast pushing through the air kind of, no.
Well, I think the one
I'm
thing
more like Divya. Do you have manual backups?
I think the one thing that we do well in North Andover is the concept of right sizing. And looking at, because I always look at technology as a tool to accomplish your goals. It doesn't have any intrinsic value. And it's easy to sort of fall in love with the latest and greatest gadget or, et cetera, or, spending money or have tech for its own sake. And I think the one thing that we do well in North Andover is, even though we have become a leader in some respects, I don't think we ever set out to try and set a trend, be a leader, get an award, et cetera. We do things that are right for North Andover that may not be right for other communities. It's that right size approach that.
Job well done.
All right.
Thank you.
So I'll see you next year.
Or an email.
Thanks, Chris. Good job.
rolling back a little bit time on what we were trying to achieve in this budget cycle was to hit things we hadn't hit the prior year. Public safety, always hit DPW, the enterprise funds. Obviously, we're always gonna go through the CIP. I think every year I'll always have IT up the bat. In the subsequent year, I think it's important to bring back the senior center, the library, the HR type of things, because they truly have passion for their jobs, and they do a great job. So,
They have ever-changing programs and things like that that they're excited about, and they're improving everything that they're doing, and it's for the citizens as well, so.
so what keeps you awake at night,
Me?
besides everything?
Everything, yeah. No, I mean, everything runs fairly smooth. I mean, we have no issues with the budget right now. And I don't foresee, based on the projections that were put in place and the process and the plan that we've been following, that we're going to have any major issues, at least for the next, 5 to 7 years. I think we'll be able to sustain the budgets and the projections we have going forward, as long as we stay with those conservative projections and not look at the fact that, free cash might be up, a couple $1 million over last year, for instance, and, we need to use all that up. And once you put that into a budget and it's,
You'll never see it again.
right, and you're inflating a budget too fast, you can't sustain it. So you bring in the $2 million because you're gonna hire 5, 6, 7 new people. Well, can you sustain that for the next 7 to 10 years at that level with the COLA increases, the step increases, the OPEB, all of that? So you gotta balance
Sure.
all of that.
So, where was I gonna go with my thought process? Just lost it. My biggest concerns isn't so much with the current budget, it really has to do with the future.
Yep.
And, we're starting to poke at it and address it through the OPEB.
Mm-hmm.
Think I liked what I heard at the last OPEB meeting, by the way, kicking around some good ideas, fine tuning some.
Yep.
I know where I was going to go with my thought. The reason why I wanted Jean here is because, it's Jean, right?
Jean, yep.
Yeah,
Jean and I.
is because one of the ways we grow, in particular, for example, we were saying how are we able to maintain the water rates and sewer rates the same is not so much, we're just keeping our costs the same. That's a lie. Costs go up, labor goes up.
Yep.
So there's got to be a volume thing. And the same thing is true with our base for the property taxes.
Mhm.
It's got to go up, and so that was the purpose of me wanting to meet with Jean, was to say, what do we have in play right here that's going to help benefit? I know it's slow, I know it's maybe inches and stuff like that, but help grow things here in North Andover.
Planning-wise?
Planning-wise, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, because I would rather defer to her because she's involved. I mean, she's she's wearing several different hats as well. Yeah, as a lot of us are. And unfortunately, it's a situation that we're in right now. But she would be the best to speak to that, and I probably could have gotten some answers for you had,
Yeah.
I don't want to
That's okay.
misspeak on what the best goal is and what their plan, the plan is going forward.
Is this an opportunity for us to ask Lynn any
Yes.
kind of
Any
question?
Of course
kind
it
of
is.
question.
I'm
All
here.
right.
There you go.
How'd she sit for that photo?
We know that there is a potential recreational complex that's
Yep,
being talked
right
about at the
over
planning
here,
board tonight.
yep.
Yeah. So could you remind me when that is supposed to start? Like, what's the schedule for that? Do you recall?
Well, I believe, the problem is we gotta get it
Through
through
per-
planning.
Understood. So
Right,
I guess
so that has been delayed
my ultimate
more than, right.
My ultimate question
Mhm.
is, how does that timing impact the budget? And then I'm sure you already have, but have we thought about how that would also impact operating costs? It's a very large complex, so
It is, right.
what is that? How is that going to impact our budget going forward.
For the overall budget, for the,
Not just the capital,
construction.
right, well, not just the capital piece, so we've kind of addressed that, right?
Yep.
Last year, Andrew came in and had explained how that's gonna be funded through
Yep,
you know,
we know how
CPC
the
and then,
funding is.
right. But then after that, how are we going to pay to maintain it, and how much does that cost? I mean,
Yeah, I don't know that they've done an analysis yet to know what the costs are going to be to maintain it. I mean, they'll have to review that, because once the complex gets completed,
Right.
we have to be prepared every year after that to
Right.
maintain it, which would be done through Public Works, of course. So there will be an increased Public Works, structures and grounds budget, probably to either, they'll do some of it themselves as well as contract out some of the labor to maintain it.
Got
It's
it.
also gonna be based on the materials that we use over there.
Right, and who does it, and how
Right,
it's
so we
allocated,
don't really have all those details yet, because they haven't gone out we haven't
to
got to
bid,
that stage
right?
yet.
And are we prepared for that? You were talking about, we have to think kind of going
Into the future.
into the future, and it triggered, because we were talking
Yep.
about it earlier, so kind of
I
triggered that
think
question.
We have contemplated that, and we know that, I think we've built that within our projections,
Okay,
knowing,
so it's not gonna be a huge surprise, but this
No.
is something we may not have an exact number
Correct.
for, but we feel confident is
Yep.
achievable.
is it definitely achievable.
Awesome,
Yep.
okay.
Sure. I see that,
Our favorite place.
I know, all that work that's going to be going into it right now, is that preparing
We
it?
are not, as far as from the capital.
Well, I
and-
was looking at the facilities.
Yeah,
You know,
um,
just because there was, part of his expenses were, you know, roof and a bathroom, and is
We-
that in preparation for sale?
No, we have put that all on hold, unfortunately.
Oh,
We
okay.
are not going to, we've informed Steve to hold off on that.
I
Just to
see.
let everyone know, Chris McClure told me that he posted the second RFP today
Okay,
for the Stevens estate, so that's available,
okay,
for people to view and,
all right. Yeah, I was kind of curious
Respond
about
to.
that, because it was actually in the,
yeah,
budget there,
the way we're approaching it, hopefully, I mean, we've got to give them time. This new RFP is rewritten to give anybody that's going to respond to it additional time. The last RFP had a lot more details in it, and it was, the timeframe for the response was limited. So it didn't really give everybody enough time to provide the right information in the detail. So this is expanding the timeframe. We changed the scope of it a little bit. So I would guess within 60 days or 45 days, we'll have some sort of responses. And
what's the scope of the actual area? Is it the building and just like when you go to an event, all just the grounds
Yeah, I
around
don't
it,
know the specifics on that. I know on the town meeting warrant, at town meeting this year, we're going to be putting a conservation restriction on that,
Yeah.
and that is outlining the whole
Okay.
area that will be put in that
Like,
restriction.
who's responsible for, after it's, whoever buys it, who's responsible for, you know, the drive up and
Right.
the fields around it and
Mhm.
the
Right,
trails
so
and
that
the
will be
walkways and,
clearly
Okay.
delineated, and what will be the portion that will be sold or leased, whatever
Yep.
option is chosen for the RFP and
okay.
the process. So the goal here is to really wipe our hands of
Yeah.
running a function hall.
I applaud the effort.
Municipal government cannot run a function hall and succeed.
Yeah.
It's just, we're not built, they're not built to be run by a restriction driven by town meeting appropriations.
It's not a new conversation,
Yeah.
and the town gave it a really good try.
We did.
A really, a
We did.
long, good
And
try.
and it's struggling right now.
Yeah.
It is clearly struggling,
So,
yep. So the profits that we've made in the last few years that we've been able to put back into the building are now completely being
Yeah.
depleted.
yeah,
And it will not sustain any longer than
Yeah.
probably not even another year.
it was a tough nut to crack, and
Yeah.
it wasn't gonna happen. Yeah.
Why did it peak? And you had people renting it, read it was
Right.
rented a dozen times. Was it a lack of marketing because there's no funds, or?
I haven't been able to get a clear answer on that. I'm not quite sure why it's declining so drastically. I mean, we can't keep up with the maintenance that it really needs. I mean, you gotta invest millions of dollars to bring that estate to where it should be. In a municipality here, they can't sustain it, so they can't pay it. So if they don't pay it, then we would have to out of the operating budget, would then in turn affect operations of the town.
I guess I'm more surprised that they did have this success leading up to, that I would have
Yeah,
expected.
they had a couple years of success.
I would have expected
Yeah.
where we are today. I was
Yeah,
more
I mean,
surprised that they were able to do it for a while.
The problem with a function hall like that is you rob Peter to pay Paul. For instance, you have a year's worth of, you're collecting deposits for future events, and those deposits are being used to run the function that current year.
Right.
And then when you get to a point when you're not getting any events, you don't have any more
Makes sense.
deposits, so you're losing,
Right.
you know.
Right.
So it's,
Did the
Chicken
RFP, did you get, I realized the first RFP maybe wasn't ideal. Was
Mhm.
there a lot of interest? Did you get, did
actually,
people
we
ask
only had one
questions?
responder. We had a lot of people that were interested and looked at it, but we only got one response, which was a good response, but they weren't, used to the requirements of a municipal RFP. So they didn't provide all of the documents. We spoke with them, told them that we were gonna reject their response, which they were okay with it, cause now they got an opportunity to
Yeah.
bid again. They have more time. We've opened up the window longer for them to respond. They'll be able to provide all of the documents, give the better vision of what they wanna do up there. The one company we did get the response from, they already have several existing function halls. And they tend to take old estates like this, and redo them, and make them grander, and make them into a successful, function hall. And they were anticipating taking the carriage house and renovating that, and also making that some sort of a chapel, and then have the main estate as basically the function hall. You know, so it was exciting what they plan on doing, so we'll look forward to their response
Do we
the
think it's
second.
more likely to sell it or to lease it?
Not sure. My goal is to sell it. We'd love to sell it.
Yeah.
I mean, and it would put a little bit of cash infusion into the town again, depending on what we get. And I think this time around, we'll get more responses, more interest. We
We're
don't-
more likely to have the building be kept and maintained in a
Mhm.
wonderful condition too. I mean, I'm on the historical society, but that's a new push. It used to be
Yeah.
you'd have to buy the buildings to maintain them. That really isn't the deal anymore. I mean, because you can put this, constrictions on it, that you can sell it and have someone else maintain it.
Right.
And
Right.
keep it as the historical building that it is, so it's
I mean,
pretty cool.
the cost involved in keeping that running, as well as the labor and of all the staff, my time, Megan, the former deputy manager, managing that, just the administrative nightmare to maintain that place, and the hours put in, it's not cost effective. If we charged all the costs to that, it would be upside down a long time ago. Yep.
It's not the business you want to do.
No.
Any other questions for Lynn? If we have questions, feed them to me,
Mhm.
and then we'll get them to Lynn.
Yep.
And we'll make it part of the public document later on.
Yep.
So,
How are you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Mhm. So, your next meeting, what is the plan?
the next meeting is scheduled, formal meeting is scheduled for the April 3rd, and in that meeting, it's public comment. We'll have a large audience like
Yep.
tonight, maybe Stan.
Yeah, Stan's over it.
I figured that. But we also need to, at that time, vote on the budget and the CIP.
Good, that's what I was wondering.
Apparently, we also will be voting on the warrants, since the
Yep.
town, Board of Selectmen have already voted on it as well at that point in time.
Right, and the board will look at it again on Monday at their meeting, make some minor changes. I'll have to there's a couple articles that I've just changed
Did
the
you
wording
get
up a
any
little bit.
strange public?
We got the citizen petitions? Yeah, no, they were good. We only got 3.
Like, the thing for like, dogs can,
No, nothing strange.
okay.
There's looking at the warrant, there's really nothing controversial
Dogs
on
can
it
vote.
this year that I see.
No, there isn't.
I mean, there might be some discussion on the Stevens estate for the conservation. We're rescinding, or the 40R over at 1600 Osgood. I mean, there's nothing too dramatic on there, and the budget is straightforward, capital is straightforward.
Is this already printed? These are already mass produced?
There's only, for the town managers recommended, there's usually only like 20,
Okay.
so that every member has one. I know there's a lot of things that have to be corrected.
Yeah, there's a couple typos in it.
Yeah,
The map
no,
is-
we've already,
The map is
trust me.
right, but the,
I have a book that Dee, the assistant town manager, has gone through already for me. It's because it's produced so fast,
yeah,
where Andrew was leaving, and we needed to get it done, because he wanted to have the book presented to the Board of Selectmen before he left.
okay.
So unfortunately, it
Trying to
didn't
be
get.
helpful, not,
I
because the map
appreciate
is
it.
right, everything's
Yep,
right.
nope, I get it, thank you. There's a lot. There's quite a few things in this book.
I saw this, right? This is
Yeah.
like,
That was, yeah.
for someone who I have to produce stuff, you know.
Yep.
When you
Yeah.
get it, you're like,
Uh-huh.
and I right away, I'm like, ooh, good
And you know when I
solution,
noticed
good
it?
solution.
When I was sitting in a meeting at the
You did
Board
a
of
good job
Selectmen,
with
I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, exactly, and you're just like, you just wanna go like, oh, I
I
can't
know,
believe I
I
did it, I
know.
can't
Trust
believe I
me.
did it.
I know.
You know
This
what we're
book
talking about
gives
is the
me
date.
headaches every year.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Because it's,
Yeah.
it's produced so quickly.
caught that myself.
Oh,
Yeah.
real, oh, no, I see me right away,
You
I
of
looked and I
all
saw it
people.
right away.
You of all people. The front
See, there's a
cover
little,
says-
there's a little sticker,
You've
no,
loved-
but there's the
Yeah.
sticker
You've
over,
loved
it.
the-
when it first was
Yeah.
printed, it said,
What is it covering, what, 19?
19.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
whoever did the sticker made
I
it.
did it.
You
Oh,
did a
yeah.
great job.
Oh, no,
You
it's,
can't
it's,
take it off. I know.
it's, no, it's,
Yeah.
it's absolutely perfect, but it was just, I was like, oh, that's really clever, good
It
job.
matches the color. You can't even
I
read
know.
it.
It looks artistic, it's like
Yeah,
style,
yeah,
you
no.
know?
That was,
Solid
that was to
effort.
fix a mistake.
She's like, quick, do this quick.
Yep.
You know what, that's interesting.
Because you got yours at
I
the Board of
have the
Selectmen.
original.
Right. He got the original one
2019,
because he got it the night of the Board of Selectmen's
This
meeting,
Yeah, and it worked.
when I noticed it.
That's a keeper.
Yeah.
Can you sign this one for me?
Yeah.
I think we're good, Lynn. The only
Okay.
thing that we need to discuss amongst us here is really the warrant letter. and How
Okay.
we're gonna get her done kind of thing.
Okay.
I
And
think-
anything you guys need to get from me, I know, I gotta get you those numbers, I'll get those to you. But anything else that I can help you guys with to finish up your letter for, you know, for the actual numbers and
So
stuff, just
appreciate it,
give me
Lynn.
a call. Okay,
Thank you.
perfect, thank
Thanks.
you.
Going to the planning board meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah. Go home and.
I'm gonna text and find out where it's at, because hopefully we already voted on the recreation complex.
I don't know, I've been looking. to
See if these
we
guys
get
get a
updates.
streaming of it here.
Well, I might have a text message, so.
Oh. Don't bother coming back.
But there's a whole bunch of people in the kitchen watching it. I know, gotten updates.
In the kitchen, in your.
In the kitchen, in the town hall, in the kitchen, instead of being
Yeah,
in the
well,
room.
there's a TV in there,
Yeah,
'cause they
exactly.
can't-
because they can't probably fit.
Well, or they just don't want to be part of the, discussion, yeah. Or,
Silent observers.
or, yeah, or a distraction, lurkers, you know.
Lurkers.
Lurkers.
Oh, like
It's a favorite pastime.
Yeah.
Okay, good night.
Good night,
Anyway.
Lynn.
Good night. Thank you, Lynn.
So we're sort of up to a deadline. They want the warrant letter from us polished, finalized by April 5th. Which really means when we meet on that public hearing, we got the vote. We have on the budgets, we have the vote on the warrants that are applicable to us. And we need to say, are we good with the letter? And I think my philosophy in whether it's gonna happen, where we're gonna be 2/3 less, or a third less, or a half less, the philosophy and goal is gonna make the letter easier for us to finish and accomplish, because if you're basically saying, what's the most important thing? And I mean, I'm not sure, when you put mine up there, you'll see, I wrote down a bunch of different things, which is classic. Then I have, well, alternatively, that one, which isn't gonna fly either, but my point is that, it should go fast. Ed, I'm gonna, not putting anyone on the spot, do you have anything that you'd like to present relative to the,
Yeah, I printed out copies of it.
okay,
So I did it a little, I was trying to shorten it, so I was trying to be a little bit more brief. So I have what I wrote, and I have last year's behind it for
that's
comparison.
exactly what Thomas did, by the way. Thanks, by the way, it was good.
Let me just pass these around, you can,
You said 50%, and I think
You did.
I overachieved.
In fact, I actually put your part 2 up there, just as an example, because I really like what you did. Oh, yeah.
The length is much shorter, yes.
But we were supposed to have the bullet points and then expand later, right?
Well,
Select and then do it.
yeah, a structure like this
Yeah.
is exactly what we're trying to achieve.
I think that at this exercise, it was just to get everyone to,
Yeah.
to pay attention, start paying
Right.
attention to your section and get,
You know,
get things.
without me reading your document, and by the way, I'm sort of gonna go around a little bit quickly.
Yep.
And then again, focus back on the bigger picture. But without reading your document, in a few sentences, what pops in your mind relative to the enterprise funds?
So the elevator, I tried to make it like an elevator pitch.
Yeah.
I kept the explanation because I think people need context, but I maybe took a sentence out of that. But the water is pretty all set. The sewer, there wasn't much remarkable there. It really came down to the Stevens Estate, so that's where I tried to explain it. But hearing Lynn, I didn't want to minimize it, but the Stevens Estate was the one I think people are going to pay attention to because of its implications. But if you start explaining, you're going to be typing forever. So I think if somebody sees this, what does the voter go to get because they don't get this, where would they go to get the full?
Actually, this stuff is outlined.
All right, so it is online.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, the message is pretty simple. The water rates aren't going up. The sewer fund isn't going up. They kick off a lot of cash that goes toward maintenance and repair. And then we've got the Stevens Estate that's a little bit different, and it's not going so well. And there's an RFP. And I took the liberty of speaking that the Finance Committee supports the town's evaluating its options for this enterprise. I mean, I
Yeah.
assume everybody thinks it's a good idea to.
I think it's really sad what the state it's in right now. So I think what I heard is a possibility. Sounds really cool. So,
As I say, it's a long time coming, because there were really serious arguments back when Rick Nardello was on, I don't remember Rick. He was a real proponent. We gotta sell this. And that was a long time ago. Everybody's like, no, we have to try to make a go of it. And so we did. This is a real college try, and it's not working out anymore. We can't just keep throwing money at it.
I think one of the things that I like to take away, Ed, in your section of the enterprise funds is the Stevens Estate does not directly impact me, other than esoterically important. But it's what really impacts me is being able to get that fresh drinking water. And do you see anything in the budget or anything in the capital that is good or bad, or it's good adequate maintenance? They've got a good plan going?
I mean, the debt service is going down. It was at 40%, now it's at 20%, 18 and 22 or whatever it was. That was pretty remarkable. The sewer does have, the sewer fund, they do have growing expenses, though. I guess the assessment keeps going up. This is the second year in a row. The assessment was substantial. It accounts for most of the growth.
Yeah.
I mean, they seem pretty well managed, and they kick off a lot of cash that gets reinvested.
It's
So
our assessment relative to what we're getting charged for the sewer.
Right, well, one thing, and I don't know if we want to put it in here, but we might want to talk about or think about, is that as people start discussing more about how sewage overflows are impacting the Merrimack River and our environment, we may be hit with additional costs. I don't know if we want to do that, have that conversation this year, because we don't have any concrete, a bill that's been passed or something specific to point to.
I read about
But,
that, yeah.
but that's coming down the line, and I think we need to be prepared for that as a community, to have additional costs related to that. Well, right now, we're dumping sewage, a certain amount of overflow sewage into the river.
People get sick downriver. People that drink out of the river, after every heavy rain, they actually get ill from it. Even though they have purification like us, stuff gets through. And
We are fortunate to have like Kachikwick.
Yeah.
We
Let's
don't
think-
have to, let's just think about it, and if
It's a
there's
good-
a relevant
It's a good,
comment, then.
it's a good
Yeah.
outward.
The challenge was I was trying to, because I'm always tasked to speak to executives, and you get like 3 minutes to explain gravity. And you really, if you, because I had a couple things in here where I'd comment on something, but I go, I'd have questions. And so I actually, less
Yeah.
is more. I tried to just give the big picture. I mean, I think if somebody goes back and digs in, water and sewer seem like they're pretty well managed. Stevens Estate is too. I just think it's
It's
not,
not,
it doesn't fit what a town does.
right, it's not,
And,
Something very interesting to just point out here, from my experience when I went to Dubai, I saw the sewer lines, the pipes actually going through the city because it's a desert, and they utilizing the sewer water to water the plants that they have in the city throughout. So it's not only provides water, but it also provides the nutrition from the sewer water to the plants.
I'm sure they're gonna mix all that in when they actually solve the problem. But
It was
massive
amazing
infrastructure
thing to
project.
see how they
But
have
cool.
greenery all over using that water.
Yeah, it's very cool.
is there anything that I don't think there's anything in the section of the enterprise funds that you've excluded that would beg someone later on go,
No,
well,
I
why didn't
would-
they talk about that?
I combed all the charts looking for increases, and everything seems to be pretty, when you, I saw Andrew Andrew likes to pull out the, CIP contribution, or whatever, the transfer to CIP. So when I put the numbers, I tried to remove that, because you decide what you're gonna transfer, and that can have a material impact. So I tried to stay consistent with how we did it, but, I mean, I actually spent a lot of time to make it simple. I actually think I understand it a lot better, because I had to keep referring to things, because I kept, confusing myself initially.
I gotta tell you, that's the beauty of something like this. Thomas, I'm on to you now. CIP. 2020, pretty boring, pretty basic, pretty.
It's pretty boring, there's
Yeah.
not much, as, a little bit more than half is for regular maintenance and upkeep, of our roadways, streets. No surprise, yes, since we're spending less on buildings this year, so the garage at the police station is really the biggest, building expense, plus a replacement of a fire equipment at the fire department. I pointed out that yes, there's an increase over the original budget to complete the senior center.
Yep.
But that this is not because we underestimated construction, was market-driven increases contributing to that overrun.
Yep.
So that's, it's pretty straightforward 2020. What I pointed out in the long term is, basically two affects the Facility Master Plan 2, focusing on our elementary schools. That Franklin is first, Atkinson second, and then Kittredge. And point one thing out, that our debt to revenue service will increase over 5% in the last 2 years. Pointed out in my last sentence that the AAA bond rating really focuses on that 5%. And we should, when we approve the budgets in 2023 and 24, which is planned today to be over 5%, we want to have a look if we really need to go over 5% at that point. So that's really all.
Yep. I thought you did this very succinctly. You hit all the key points, and you hit the out years. One of the things that we're not touching right now, but beginning to, which is kind of good, is the North Andover Middle School. And actually, I think that's something that doesn't necessarily belong in yours as much as in the school section of this warrant letter.
And it should,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so I applaud you for that, and I'm not sure how that would factor into that ratio, by the way, if they exclude that, I think, from the ratio calculation, because it'll be then excluded, so
Yeah,
Well, it
and how
depends.
much,
It depends.
it could be a
You
mix.
how
don't,
much
you don't
is
know
it
how they're gonna
funded?
fund it. They
Yeah.
don't know who's gonna fund it, they don't know how.
You're right.
We can't, that's speculation at this
Yeah.
point. We just know we need it.
Hey, could you email this to me and Sasha? Okay.
Yeah, if you wanna email them, I can, everyone's that sent it to you,
I will.
cause then I
wanna-
can upload them.
I want to work on Liz's she presented some graphs, and I think I can improve upon them kind of thing, so.
Great,
yeah.
yeah, whenever you have a chance, and then I'll
I don't think we
get
even
a-
know how much the middle school is. I mean, there's numbers out there, 20, 25, 30 million, but I don't think anybody really knows what it is.
Well, they haven't, so, my understanding, and it's limited, is that they haven't been able, you would have to hire someone, right, to do that analysis, and they haven't put that funding in the budget, so they wouldn't have that analysis, right? There's probably a ballpark, I'm sure,
Yeah, I've heard the same ballpark you have, Thomas.
22 to 25.
23, 25,
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that,
Maybe selling the Stephen Estate, you know, gives you some funding, at least maybe at least a deposit.
you mean for the consultant?
Well, you know,
Who knows?
I mean,
just
that's a
You know,
impressive, you know.
I know something
asset.
about selling businesses. We just have to say, well, this guy comes in here and does a great job. The cash flow will be X over the next 10 years, and therefore it's worth about $25 million.
Perfect.
Divya, you have some ideas of what you plan?
I sent both of you an email just a few minutes ago,
Oh, okay.
and I can just touch base on the topics, the bullet points. So we see a 2.9% increase in municipal spending over the last year, FY9. And the personal cost for FY20 is 15.7 million, which accounts for 66% of the general fund of non-school operating budget. We have only 1.8 FTE count increase in the personal total, and basically we have one FTE in DPW, project manager, and one FTE in fire department. We had 0.1 position in shared services, while a 0.3 decrease in town manager selectman's office. So altogether, we had a negative of 0.2 positions, thereby making it only 1.8 increase.
We'll probably get into reducing that to maybe even nothing, because what we're really interested here, I think, is those two full-time equivalents. As you just mentioned, it's only a negative 2.2. On the project manager, I think we have to iterate, since people may be spending their time waiting for the town meeting to start reading the letter. And the project, what do they need a project manager for?
Okay.
And so you need to say, well, the reason why the project manager is in the budget, I know it's talked about within the document here, but I think it's something that, it's an important enough position, why? We think we need a point person to do all this work for us.
And maybe it'd be great to say the last time someone in the fire department was hired.
And the police department, they were in.
But they don't have another,
cahoots.
right, they don't have enough, but I just mean, you know, to give context, right? The
Yeah, you.
ambulatory
Just highlight
services.
on those two.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
yeah, the first since 2000,
No, more, yeah,
2001?
something crazy.
it was like 2001.
We should send that for Lynn.
You could
have a
ask.
specific answer, we should send it to Lynn for
Yeah.
that. Then, I don't know if I have to touch upon this, but I have written down health insurance premiums for active and retired employees are projected to increase by 7% year over year. Water rate remains relatively unchanged for the 8th consecutive year. Personal costs are recommended to increase by 3.5% over FY19, and only, it's basically modest increase in salaries in other departments.
So we'll leave the
And
water and sewer
Yeah, for their,
for
yes.
Ed.
So I don't have much though.
So, last year, the
We-
way we structured this, hold on.
We talked about the contractual agreements.
Well, that was in the
which-
personnel section.
Yes,
so my-
personal section.
So my question, here, let me pull it up, see if I can pull it
Collective
up on the weekend.
bargaining, we are leaving all of that.
No, well, there's two really sections, so, hold on one second. This may not be the exact last version we submitted, but it's close enough.
Using how we lost configuration.
We had a different heading, basically staffing and compensation last year.
Well, there's hold on one second, let me show you what I'm talking about. Let me just find it, please.
I have this, the whole thing here in front of me.
the draft is probably good enough for now. Oh, but this is the annual, there's a PDF version. That's 2017 now.
Hold on.
No, here it is, I have here.
I understand. I want to, so everyone can see it, but then I have to fix my casting. Sorry, guys. 1 second.
It's in Google, there you go. Should be in that Eclipse, right?
Yeah? No, hold on.
Then it's in the Chrome.
It's here. Sorry. I need to cast from here. Can you see it?
Nope.
Oh my god, guys.
You in Chrome?
Yeah, it won't let me cast two at once. Driving me crazy. Hold on. Okay, let's see.
Figure if I blink my
If it's not working, I can just read out that.
Well, no, so what I'm trying to show is that there's,
Our structure was different.
yeah, so, that's fine. So essentially, what there's no PDF. What this was, there was two parts that we should figure out, like which part we want included. There was a section called budget review, which is different than your personnel and staffing section.
Yes.
So but the budget review section basically talked about the overall general fund. Here's what's in it. Here's the increase, kind of like what a little bit like your first bullets, and then some of the things it talked about is, reduction in any debt, workman's comp, because in that case that was important, and just some bullets about the overall budget. I mean, is that what you're looking
I
for in
am.
that section?
Yeah.
So I think the personnel section should be in there, just like you've outlined, but it should be structured, like if you look at last year, structured more like the budget review section, not like the personnel
Yeah,
section.
I'm looking at it, last year's. I don't have it because I prepared the entire chart and I had emailed everyone. That was not really incorporated into this.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. So this is completely different, and the enterprise funds and those funds are, different people are handling those sections, so I couldn't include in that.
And that's totally fine. I was just wanted to, so
This
that,
is old.
Yeah, I mean, this is the
No,
more or
no.
less same.
This is 2017.
Yeah, but it's more or less on the same pattern.
no, we changed it from 2017 to 2018.
We changed it quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah, so in the Google Drive, if you go into the FinCom folder, in FY18, you can see a draft of last year's version that gives you the general structure. And I think that budget section is, and we can talk, we can do it together. That section is probably what we'd want to mimic somewhat, because that's more
So-
bulleted to the point, and I think the personnel section, we probably don't need to dive into.
Can you once again repeat it, Sasha, so that I include the points, yeah?
Sure. I think just look at the budget review
Oh, budget
section.
review. That'd be fine.
Yeah, I think that's probably, and if there's sections that you highlighted in the personnel section previously, and you want to incorporate them in here because they're important to this budget season, that makes sense completely. But I think having something that is similar to this, and maybe not all of it. Some of this, we wouldn't want to include. It's too redundant. We're trying to reduce redundancy.
You talked.
Anything important to touch upon from that, like you said, workers' compensation and.
But that was
the
just because it was
salaries. I mean,
important and that, yeah. So just like you said, like the increase in FTEs and why
Yeah.
those are important in a bullet.
Yeah,
Yeah, and then there's a section there which I think is worth just eliminating altogether, because you're gonna cover it in part in the overall government, and that is the staffing and compensation.
yeah,
That's talked more about staffing,
Agree.
salary policy as opposed
Yeah.
to budget, in my opinion, when I look at that now.
Yep.
I have summary is gonna be not too similar to last year's, as far as the focus being, what did we do? Finance committee, what were the highlights kind of stuff? And I don't wanna cover areas that we've already, as an executive summary, you're gonna cover some sections anyways, but, the bullets.
Yeah.
Good. But the more important thing for me is, I mean, I don't know anything about.
Okay,
You
so
know
you
what we
want-
don't have here? CPA.
Okay, so you want me to do the budget review? I can do,
So they didn't vote. They submitted their the 14th, on March 14th.
So that to the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, the calendar says
I'm looking at the calendar too.
it's the 14th.
okay, so I can do this budget review, but I thought that this was supposed to be done after we have discussed with everyone, and then this was like a
We're done.
synopsis of,
We're done.
synopsis of everything.
Different. That's executive summaries.
Yes.
So that what you're talking about is the
Budget,
executive summary.
but no, I'm talking about the budget review. I'm not talking about the executive summary.
Do the budget review based on the feedback we got,
Everything, yes.
including your
Including,
review.
yes, including this.
So,
Yeah, that's fine. I'll take care of that.
So the budget review. This would be specific to the municipal budget, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The operating budget
Which includes basically everything except school and, yeah.
and the other
Yeah,
sections
other
that are.
sections.
It's
Yeah.
a kind of a catch-all.
Yes.
So if there's anything important in a specific department to point out, or like, just like you did, exactly.
we don't have a date for the CPA budget coming our way.
We can connect with.
But that's about, we can vote on that separate from the CIP and from the operating budget and the warrants. Well, that'd be part of the warrants, but
Yes.
I know in years past, there had been actually a time when we didn't get the CPA until the town meeting.
Really?
Because
So-
they're always late.
Always late. I was hoping things had changed this year. Since I know somebody that was on the finance committee who's on that now.
I imagine there's a little frustration going on there. I would
Could be.
be surprised.
I'll reach out to Bill, because he's my point contact there anyway, so. And, relative to the other section, so I will encapsulize everything, keep it simple. Ed, I know it's the hardest thing in the world to give that 30-second elevator speech, but that's exactly my goal, even on the executive summary. Guys, what's exciting this year? What do people really want to know? What do they want to know? They want to know that the budget is in balance and that things are covered. Okay? Now, one thing that got my concern, and it might be more of a graph, is still OPED. I want to say something favorable from what I was at the meeting this last Tuesday. And the other thing I want to point out, though, is on the Revenue and Fixed Cost Committee, you should see that the retirement money, the cost of retirement going up is 9%.
Do you want to? What happened at the OPEB meeting?
At the
Wanna-
OPEB meeting, we're kicking around all kinds of different ideas. Andrew had actually put out a white paper.
Is that public yet?
I don't think it's public yet, because in fact, I know it's not public yet. And you're more than welcome to read it, share it, that's not an issue, but basically, he was kicking out around a bunch of different ideas about how to attack this thing, not significantly, because you're never gonna get all the way down, but in pieces. And we were talking about who pays, who's in it, who isn't in it. For example, one of the things that was talked about perhaps was, if you haven't been on the healthcare plan at all during your tenure in the municipality, and on the last day you decide to sign up, well, no, that's not gonna work. Perhaps put in some policies relative to that. The other thing that was talked about was, this year they put $60,000 in for those two full-time equivalents into the OPED trust. Nice, but there were 5 heads put into the school system where none of that happened. So there's $300,000 there, there's not association. Interesting part of that, though, is where'd you come up with the $60,000? And really needs to be fine-tuned. Why? It doesn't take into consideration, it assumes a person's gonna be there for their entire career. They're gonna come in at the age of 30 or 35, and they're gonna retire, and they're gonna have OPED benefits. That's not necessarily the case. People come and they go. And so therefore, the cost is actually probably less. The other thing that we talked about is making the reserve, the trust reserve, 10% of the OPEB liability. We're not that far from it. It's achievable. So a couple more $1 million and we'll be within striking range of achieving that 10% and maintaining that 10% bogey. And right now we're at a $110 million liability. And my idea was, of town meeting, was to announce that we're going to scrap the entire operating budget and we're gonna pay off the OPEB budget, OPEB liability. It's a wash,
Good luck.
but that's me being a clown. I'm the finance guy here.
Were we talking about 10% or did we talk about 5? The OPEB was originally 5%.
Yeah, the target's 10.
Now it's 10.
It's gonna be 10. So we're gonna get there. We're in striking zone.
But if that's paid as you go out of earnings, is there ever a scenario when that would be unmanageable? I mean, I think it's great to have the reserve, but does it, what has to happen for it to become unmanageable?
I think it's as manageable as you're gonna get. That's one of the things that goes towards our AAA rating, is as manageable as you get. Because what that reserve does is it pays for things that, those down years, and you can't,
Right.
don't have enough money to put towards the OPEB on a pay-as-you-go. But, you know, there's a lot of scenarios there. Is it perfect? No. We're not a Wellesley, but it's better than most towns.
We don't have
Right.
the commercial revenue as a Wellesley.
Be
But the
interesting
one
with
that
that.
concerned me right now is, and I want to and analyze it a little bit, it was the retirement benefit, the pension plan, pension costs basically going up at 9%. That is not OPEB. That's something different.
Right.
So, anything on the school?
Sure. So basically, I think that we should stick to last year's format. I think it was pretty effective. I'm a little biased, but basically, what I think is important is showing the percent increase and really breaking down what level services costs, because I don't think people recognize that the incremental increase is really to cover level services, and then there's a little bit left. So this was last year's. Then I think we'd like to probably stick to this, that we focus on why that increase, what is attributed to that, which in this case is, a lot of it is additional staffing, and we can walk through that, and then just basically say, their strategy is great so far. Like, I really think there's been a significant improvement in trying to achieve their strategic goals and matching budget to that over the last couple of years. But we're still a long way away to being where I think people maybe want us to be, and to make sure we continue to outline that in a really productive way. So if you look last year, kind of how we structured that is is kind of within this last paragraph. And this is because our big concern was, all right, how are we going to reduce classroom size? And so this year, I think we need to follow up to that and say, all right, we have done a great job reducing class size. We're continuing to do that with this operating budget. It gets us this result. Therefore, it's kind of a net, what did Greg call it? A net zero in terms of like achieving that goal. But here's the next project that we need to be focused on. And it's the middle school. So we've achieved this, and we need to continue to move forward, and this is what we see as an issue on the horizon.
Your thoughts, Chris?
No, that makes total sense, because like every budget going forward with the school, I mean, ever, it's like, well, where are we starting from? And we're starting from level services. It's always started there.
Yeah.
I mean, in level services, it varied, but
Can't get away.
Like-
you can't get away, and in the level services, people don't understand. They're like, well, why do you need more money than you need last year? Everything's always more expensive. It just always is.
And this year, what I found, all right, so if you look, last year, the school budget increased by 3.65%. And I know this seems arbitrary, but in terms of the actual dollars for school, this is, significant. So they got 0.84% budget increase for above level services. This year, they have an even bigger budget increase. It's 3.75%, but that share of above level services is only 0.76%. So
That's an interesting point. The real dollars, that's what you're talking about.
it seems really insignificant, but to,
No, it's
you know,
huge. It's a
a
big
Chromebook, that, you know, that's another kid with a tool to utilize that may impact their education.
So I have a couple thoughts for you in this thing as well. It came across from the conversations we had with the superintendent, was the additional cost of, I'll call it support staff.
Mhm.
It's huge.
Mhm.
I got that message loud and clear saying, you just can't send, you know, our well-taught teachers into the classroom anymore. They need the support for the second English as a second language, for special needs, keeping special needs students here in town as opposed to the
Yep.
expensive out. Those, to me, eat away the budget. And this year, we're having to dip into the sped to cover surprise, you know?
Yeah.
It's ugly.
Well, and you know, we have to point out that this, you know, this percentages that we're utilizing here don't include that program that they're taking from the municipal side as a one-time thing.
That big additional, yes, but I'm also talking about the fact that sped
Yeah.
by itself is just, talk about the biggest wild card out there.
It is the biggest wild card, and as years go by, I mean, I know it might be level right now, but the state used to pay a lot more. And that just keeps going down and down and down, so we're responsible for a lot of it, and that's why trying to keep things in-house, that's why it's so worth paying for a program that we're not really sure about, because if it is successful, it's huge, keeping people in-house. But even so, the better your school department is, the better services you have.
The right thing to do.
It is the right thing to do, but the better services that you have for your, you know, your special education needs, the more people want to be
Stay.
here
Yeah.
and take advantage of it. And it is the right thing to do. You can't go back up from that, but that's the reality of the situation,
Yeah.
and that's why the schools are expensive.
So the two of you are gonna collaborate in school, Sasha and Vivian are gonna collaborate on the
Budget
overall
process.
Yep.
budget overview.
Yep.
Thomas has got, Thomas's project is done, Ed's project's pretty well done. I've got the summary to do, I'm gonna work with Chuck on the OPED, but I think that's gonna be, that was a huge piece last year, that's gonna be cut way back down.
So in
Uh,
terms of timing,
Yes,
it would be really, I'm gonna look at my calendar on my phone. Today's the 19th. It would be very helpful. When's our meeting? The 3rd? It's a Wednesday?
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, why is it a Wednesday?
Not sure how that ended up there, Angela.
I don't know, that's the day you.
It had to,
You
there
know
was
what
a
it is?
reason.
It was in Andrew's tentative budget calendar, and we've already been told we can change that. So if we want to change it to Tuesday,
You know what, I already put it in the newspaper for the public comment.
Okay.
I would keep it this, because then
Fine,
if,
fine.
because if you don't want Jean in here, did you want Jean Enright in here? I mean, you have to have it on a Wednesday then, because planning board meetings are
So-
always Tuesday.
I don't think we have the opportunity to do that still.
no. The other thing, though, is I'm going to ask questions of Gene, and I'm thinking about doing that and making that part of the public document that we put out, part of our minutes. I'm thinking the timeline as well. This thing has to be wrapped by the time we meet on the 3rd. So a
Can
few of us are going to have to get together. Next Tuesday is the OPED meeting, so it's hard for me to do that.
I think my generation is all about computers, if that's okay. Like, if everyone can email it to me by the 27th,
Okay.
I can at least put together a document that's relatively cohesive, and I can put that up on give me like 48 hours. I'll probably end up doing it late Friday night or something when I get home. So if you know, so you guys can look it over the weekend, and then we can talk internally about who maybe wants to take a couple stabs at.
I'm going to move it back a little bit. Is it possible to get the thing more into like the 25th, having it done by Monday night, the 25th?
We'll try to work over the weekend. and then
Let's get it
send
done by this
something over
weekend.
the- Yeah.
I was just
The
trying to give
reason I
everyone a
was
week, but yeah.
Give us the weekend. People, I'll get this thing done by Sunday. It'll need work. That's the reason why if we wait until the following weekend, we're up against a window. We're up against a wall, rather. So, I wish it was a window. But anyways, so let's get it done by, let's have the documents in Sasha's possession by close of business Monday, the 25th.
Sasha, did my email come through you?
To my,
Did you send it to me?
Yeah, I just sent it about,
oh, you just sent it? Hold on.
yeah, about 5 minutes ago.
Let me just
Well, wait a minute,
refresh.
we don't-
I got on Xfinity and then now I can't get on anymore.
No,
Did
it
not
didn't.
go
Did you send it to my North Andover mail
through. Think so.
or my G? Hold on, I can check my other one.
Whatever popped up first.
Might be my other Gmail.
I got used to sending to you both your Gmails. because you-
I get them.
Okay. I get them too.
I have two Gmail accounts too.
I have
No, I
10
didn't. I didn't get
calendars
it.
for every
I'll
meeting
resend it
from
to you.
Angela because it
Sasha,
goes
can you email me
100
the
times.
Last year's one.
You bring up the date
It's in the.
Yeah, this, you have it in your email box, right? Can you just forward it?
No, I don't.
So
I
me,
have it
there-
in my in the
The
Google
people
Drive,
on that
but I can
meeting
forward it.
invite
Yeah, thank you.
that no longer participate in finance, just don't bother with them anymore. Imagine they, really?
You mean it?
There's people, when I look at the invite, there's a lot of people, there's several people on the calendar.
Okay,
There's several people in there that just, if they're getting that invite, they don't really need it.
Okay.
They're invited, but
yeah.
they're invited by public social media anyways. So everyone game for the 25th, close of business. Thomas, you have Ed start. I got a little bit of work to do with Chuck if I ever see him, but anyways.
Thanks, Thomas.
Let's see. We have one more thing to do. Any other further discussions on this? We all know the deadlines. So last thing we need to talk about really are the minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes dated March 5th, 2019.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. If there's any other discussions, meetings, notes, do I have anything on my calendar or public comment? We're good.
I-
So, do you have a motion?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I need a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
I think I motioned
Meeting
to
is done.
adjourn the last one.